The Dodge Challenger is currently experiencing one of the most dramatic endings in automotive history. And from everything that's happened over the past few years, it's clear this car was never going to go quietly into the night. But here is what makes this ending so insane. This was not a car that failed. This was a car that chose to die rather than compromise. A car that went out breaking 1,000 horsepower when everyone said that was impossible. So what really happened? And why did Dodge choose to kill their most legendary car instead of changing it? Today, we will be diving into what really happened to the Dodge Challenger, how it arrived too late to the muscle car party and still became a legend, why it got killed off after just 4 years, what Dodge did in 1978 that made muscle car fans feel personally insulted, how it came back in 2008 when nobody expected it, why it started a horsepower war that ended with 1,000 horsepower production cars, and why it chose to die in 2023 rather than become something it was not. But you know what will never compromise? Your support for this channel. So hit that subscribe button and let us get on with the video. The Dodge Challenger was born at the wrong time. By 1970, when it finally hit dealers, the muscle car wars had been going on for years. The Ford Mustang had owned the market since 1964, selling like crazy and defining what these cars should be. The Chevrolet Camaro and Pontiac Firebird had been fighting for second place since 1967, both trying to beat the Mustang. Plymouth, which was basically Dodge's sister company, already had the Barracuda competing in the exact same space. The market was packed with options, everyone was fighting for buyers, and Dodge was showing up late to a party that was already ending. But the Challenger was different from the start. The Mustang had started as an affordable sporty car for regular people, something anyone could buy and enjoy. The Camaro tried to be everything to everybody, with tons of options. The Challenger arrived with an attitude. It was bigger than the competition, way more aggressive looking and more focused on going fast in a straight line than anything else. It had that long hood and short back, the classic muscle car look, but everything was scaled up, more intimidating, more in your face. This was not trying to be nimble or practical or sensible. This was American muscle at its most basic. Big engine, big presence, big noise. Dodge offered the Challenger with a ridiculous number of engines. You could get a basic 6-cylinder if you actually wanted something economical that saved gas. Or you could check the box for the legendary 426 Hemi, a race engine that made over 400 horsepower and made the car genuinely scary to drive on normal roads. The 446-pack, the 383, and different versions of the 340, Dodge was basically throwing everything they had at buyers to see what worked. And for those first few years, especially 1970 and 1971, the Challenger found its people. Anyone who wanted the most aggressive-looking, most powerful muscle car walked into Dodge dealers and found exactly what they wanted. The 1971 movie Vanishing Point made the Challenger famous. That white Challenger with the black interior, driven by Kowalski across the desert, became an icon of rebellion and freedom. It was not the hero car in some big Hollywood blockbuster. It was the car in a cult classic that perfectly captured a moment. The Challenger became associated with that outlaw spirit, that not caring what anyone thought attitude. The problem was timing. The Challenger hit the market just as everything that made muscle cars possible started falling apart. By 1971, insurance companies realized that young people driving powerful cars meant expensive crashes and big payouts. They began charging rates so high that even if you could afford to buy a Hemi Challenger, you could not afford the insurance. A young driver might pay more for insurance per year than his car payment. That alone killed a huge chunk of buyers. Then came 1973, the oil crisis. Gas prices shot up overnight. Shortages created lines at gas stations where people waited hours just to fill up. Driving a car that got 8 miles per gallon suddenly seemed not just wasteful, but almost wrong. New government rules choked large engines, forcing companies to make them weaker shadows of what they had been. Federal safety standards required bigger bumpers and more crash protection, which added weight and gutted performance. Everything muscle cars were built on collapsed in about 2 years. Here is what is crucial. Unlike the Mustang or the Camaro, the Challenger could not really change. The Mustang always offered smaller engines and more economical versions alongside the powerful ones. The Camaro had similar options. But the Challenger was too big, too thirsty, too focused on being one specific thing. There was no small engine economy version of the Challenger that made sense. It was a muscle car, period. By 1974, muscle cars were basically dead. Dodge kept the Challenger going through 1974 with weaker engines and terrible sales. By the time they killed it, almost nobody noticed. The party was over. But then, in 1978, Dodge did something that confused everyone. They brought back the Challenger name. People who remembered the original got excited for about 5 seconds, until they saw what Dodge actually did. The new Challenger was based on a Japanese car platform from Mitsubishi. It was basically a rebadged import. It used front-wheel drive and 4-cylinder engines, designed for fuel economy and being practical. Everything the original Challenger was not. It was sensible, efficient, economical, and completely forgettable. It actually sold okay for a few years. People dealing with high gas prices and money problems bought them because they were decent, affordable cars. But what Dodge had done was take a name that meant something specific, that had respect with certain buyers, and stick it on something that betrayed everything that name represented. Muscle car fans felt insulted. The people who remembered the Hemi Challenger, who had grown up dreaming about that white car from Vanishing Point, looked at this front-wheel drive economy car and felt like Dodge was mocking them. This version lasted until 1983, selling fewer and fewer, and then disappeared completely. The Challenger name died, and this time it seemed permanent. For 25 years, from 1983 to 2008, the Challenger simply did not exist. Dodge focused on trucks, minivans, and practical vehicles that actually made money. The muscle car era seemed permanently finished, a thing from the past that could not exist anymore. Even the Camaro and Firebird died in 2002, unable to find enough buyers. Only the Mustang survived. It did so by constantly changing, by becoming more sophisticated, by adapting to what people wanted. Everyone thought the Challenger would never come back. The market had moved on completely. Modern safety rules, fuel economy standards, insurance costs, and pollution requirements made the kind of car the Challenger represented seem impossible. Nostalgia is nice, but it is not enough to bring back a car that cannot meet modern standards or find enough buyers. The muscle car was history. Then in 2006, Dodge showed a concept car at the Detroit Auto Show, a retro-style Challenger that looked like it drove straight out of 1970. People loved it. The response was huge and positive, but everyone thought it was just a show car, a cool design that would never actually get built. It was too impractical, too retro, too niche. No modern car company would actually build something like that for real. It was a nice tribute, cool automotive art, but not something that would ever be in showrooms. Then in 2008, Dodge did something nobody expected. They actually built it. The production Challenger launched, and it stayed very close to the concept car design. It looked like a modern version of the original, not some watered-down version or vague reference, but an actual attempt to recapture that original look and feel. And it had Hemi Vive 8 engines available right from the start. Not tiny turbocharged 4 cylinders pretending to be powerful, but actual big V8 engines that made the right sounds and delivered real power. The car was unapologetically big, noticeably heavy by modern sports car standards, completely old school in its approach. What's striking is that Dodge learned nothing from history, and that turned out to be brilliant. They did not try to make the Challenger compete with European sports cars. They did not try to make it handle like a Mustang or a Camaro, both of which were chasing European handling and sophistication. They did not try to make it fuel efficient or practical or sensible. They committed completely to straight-line speed, to that classic American muscle formula. The nostalgic styling was not just surface decoration. It was backed by real performance, by actual commitment to what the car was supposed to be. You got modern safety equipment, modern comfort, reliable mechanics, but wrapped in something that understood its own history and was not embarrassed by it. The Mustang and Camaro were evolving, becoming more sophisticated, adding better suspension and advanced handling, trying to compete with BMWs and Porsches. The Challenger stayed proudly, almost stubbornly, American. Big engine up front, old-school rear axle for years after competitors moved on, focused entirely on going fast in a straight line and looking mean while doing it. And it found buyers who wanted exactly what it offered. From the start, the Challenger offered 3 different V8 engines. You could get a relatively sensible one for decent performance and acceptable gas mileage. You could get a bigger one for serious power, or you could get the top version for maximum aggression. This was not a car trying to please everyone. It was offering different levels of the same basic thing. Then, in 2015, Dodge did something genuinely crazy. They introduced the Hellcat, a Challenger with a supercharged V8 making 707 horsepower. Not for racing, not for a limited special edition, but as a regular production car you could order from a dealer. The power number was insane. Modern supercars were not making that much, but Dodge built it anyway, and people bought it. The Hellcat became an instant legend, proof that there was still a market for excessive, unnecessary, amazing performance. But Dodge did not stop there. In 2018, they introduced the Demon, 840 horsepower from the factory. Limited production, focused specifically on drag racing, but still street legal. You could drive it to a drag strip, run ridiculously fast quarter miles, and drive it home. It came with one seat, special drag tires, and a warning that it was not legal on some drag strips because it was too fast. This was insanity made real. Then in 2023, the final year, Dodge released special editions breaking 1,000 horsepower. 1,000 horsepower in a production car you could buy from a dealer. When everyone said enough, when everyone insisted there had to be limits, Dodge kept pushing further. The horsepower wars between Mustang, Camaro, and Challenger had become genuinely ridiculous, and the Challenger won by refusing to care about what was sensible or practical or reasonable. The Challenger became something bigger than its sales numbers. It became a symbol of fighting back against electrification, against the electric future everyone knew was coming. It was the last true American muscle car, committed completely to the formula without compromise or apology. The drag racing community loved it completely. Social media made it way bigger than the sales figures suggested. It represented something people wanted to believe still existed, the idea that you could still buy something loud and fast and gloriously excessive. Then, in 2023, Dodge announced what everyone knew was coming. Challenger production would end. Not because it wasn't selling, the car had loyal buyers willing to pay good money, but because environmental rules were making it impossible to continue. Modern pollution standards and fuel economy requirements could not be met by a big, heavy car with a supercharged V8. The market the Challenger served was no longer legally possible. Dodge announced they would have an electric muscle car coming. But everyone understood the question. Can an electric car actually be a Challenger? Without the V8 rumble, without the supercharger whine, without that mechanical connection and raw feeling, what's left? Everything that made the Challenger special, everything that defined what it was, goes away with electricity. The sound, the feeling, the whole experience, all of it becomes obsolete. Electric or not, that is the core issue. Here is the thing. Dodge knows this. They understand that an electric performance car might be fast, might be impressive in numbers, but it will not be a Challenger in any real way. So they are ending it. They are choosing to kill the name rather than compromise what it means. They could keep the name alive, stick it on an electric car, point to acceleration times, and try to convince people it is the same thing. Instead, they are letting it die with dignity. The Challenger was never the best-selling muscle car. It was never the most sophisticated, or the most advanced, or the most well-rounded, but it never tried to be what it was not. From 1970 to 2023, through two completely separate lives separated by decades, it stayed committed to one idea: loud, fast, unapologetic American muscle. When that idea became impossible to keep going, it ended rather than compromise. Unapologetic is the better word. Looking at the Challenger's whole story, a pattern shows up. The Challenger's story is basically about refusing to change. In 1970, it was too committed to being a muscle car to survive when things changed. When the oil crisis hit, when insurance became unaffordable, when pollution rules killed performance, the Challenger could not change because it was too focused on being one specific thing. That killed it. Refusing to bend defined its fate. In 1978, Dodge tried to change. They tried to make the Challenger name work in a market that did not want muscle cars. They compromised everything the name stood for, and while the car sold for a few years, it destroyed what the Challenger meant. Nobody who cared about the original name wanted anything to do with that front-wheel drive economy car. The change was worse than death. In 2008, when the Challenger returned, it came back by ignoring all the advice about changing and evolving. It refused to apologize for what it was. It did not try to be sophisticated or European or sensible. It committed fully to being exactly what the original had been, just with modern safety and reliability underneath. And that worked specifically because it did not compromise. Committed describes it best. In 2023, when continuing meant completely changing what the car was, Dodge chose to end it rather than compromise again. They learned from 1978. They understood that keeping the name alive while betraying what it meant was worse than letting it die. They chose to preserve the meaning. The legacy the Challenger leaves is important, even if the sales never matched the Mustang. It proved a market existed for unapologetic muscle. It started horsepower wars that pushed everyone to build more powerful cars. It made 700, 800, 1,000 horsepower normal numbers. It showed that some things are worth keeping unchanged, that not everything needs to evolve, that sometimes the best thing is to be exactly what you are until you cannot be that anymore. Legacy matters. The Challenger represents American car culture in its purest form. Not the most practical or efficient or sophisticated, but the most honest about what it wants to be, refusing to apologize for loving power and noise and straight-line speed, choosing to end rather than compromise. The idea that bigger, louder, faster still matters, even when the whole world is moving away from it. It was the last blast of gas engine excess, and it went out exactly the way it lived. The Challenger's second life lasted 15 years, from 2008 to 2023. That's actually longer than its original run, from 1970 to 1974. And it went out on its own terms, not the market's terms, not the government's terms, but on terms that matched what it had always been. When continuing meant becoming something different, something that betrayed the core idea, Dodge said no, and they ended it. What makes the Challenger's story special is not just that it came back after decades, or that it found success by refusing to change. It is about knowing exactly what you are, and never pretending to be something else. The Mustang survived by constantly changing, by being whatever the market needed at any moment. The Camaro tried the same thing and eventually died anyway. The Challenger survived its second time by staying the same, by committing so completely to one idea that people who wanted that idea knew exactly where to find it. That stubbornness, that refusal to compromise, became its own kind of integrity. In a world obsessed with progress and evolution and change, the Challenger proved that sometimes the most powerful move is refusing to change, not because change is bad, but because some things lose their meaning when they transform. A Challenger that handles like a Porsche is not really a Challenger. A Challenger focused on fuel economy is not really a Challenger. A Challenger that is quiet and civilized is not really a Challenger. And a Challenger without a V8 definitely is not a Challenger. Maybe that is more American than anything else about it. Not flag-waving patriotism or being a domestic brand, but the idea that you can choose to be exactly what you are, without apology until circumstances make that impossible. And then you can choose to end rather than become something you are not. Some things should not change. Some things should just be remembered for what they were, when they were, why they mattered. The Challenger mattered because it refused to apologize for being loud, excessive, impractical, and focused entirely on going fast in a straight line. That is not what every car should be, but it is what the Challenger was, completely and without compromise, and that made it special. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy this kind of content, please comment, like, and subscribe. It really helps the channel. And as ever, I really do look forward to seeing you all in the next one.